Yeah, but the NHS should be sold.
Welcome back to episode 2 of Political Dregs. I am Calvin Robinson, and I am the former Vote Leave team leader for Hampstead and Kilburn constituency. With me today is Hamish Hunter, who is the former Vote Leave team leader for the Holborn St Pancras constituency. We've got Joel Davidson, former GLA candidate for the Conservative Party for Brenton Harrow. And we've got Amir Sajady, former Tory candidate, Vote Leave campaigner, and currently Lib Dem activist. Hello, guys.
Yeah.
How are we doing?
Hi, Calvin.
All good, all good. So we've got so much to talk about. It's been another crazy few days in politics. I thought it'd be great if we could kick off with the infamous Andrew Neil interview with Jeremy Corbyn. It seems to have gone down a treat with the media and with the voters. Obviously, the headline topic there is that he refused to apologise to the Jewish community 4 times. Andrew Neil gave him 4 opportunities to say, would you like to apologise for the way that your party has treated the anti-Semitic claims against it? And he refused outright. Who wants to kick off with this one?
I think Joel should.
Well, look, I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time. The guy's an anti-Semite without a shadow of a doubt, has been for over 40 years. Anyone who's Jewish knows that he has a particular issue with Jews. There's just no doubt about it. The way he talks about them is just absolutely indisputable. Jew hater, as Hamish has so eloquently put it. And for that reason alone, of course, it's an absolute disgrace that he's so close to becoming Prime Minister, or has even a chance of becoming Prime Minister. Yeah. It's really disappointing. Whenever I hear people tell me they're voting Labour, my heart sinks, frankly. A little bit of my heart sinks. Close friends. It's just very disappointing to hear, and I take it almost personally, and I know I shouldn't, but, you do, because it's just very, very difficult, But, so that's sort of from a personal perspective. It's become personal for myself and obviously most Jews, but obviously Gentiles too, who are decent people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said only on the last episode, Calvin, that the thing that I was looking out for in this election campaign was a big game-changing moment. And lo and behold, Jeremy Corbyn, that wiry old Marxist scrote, has given with both of his dirty allotment hands a really big moment, which is frankly extraordinary. I mean, we had the chief rabbi making a pretty unprecedented intervention in only into politics, but into a general election campaign. Yep. He will have known that was a big moment, a big thing to do. I think he was quite right to do that. And frankly, I thought Andrew Neil gave him a bit of a softball opening at the top of the interview, saying, "Look, do you want to apologise for this?" And you're right. He said no. Well, he refused to engage, and it's really not that difficult. Okay, I don't think that every anti-Semitic incident in the Labour Party is personally Jeremy Corbyn's problem, but he is the leader of that party. He is the representative, and frankly, the buck stops there. And his outrageous claim during the debate that every person who had been caught with anti-Semitism had been suspended or dealt with. Yeah. I mean, the chief rabbi said that was mendacious, and that's absolutely right. Andrew Neil put to him a number of examples where that hadn't been the case, and the man clearly just doesn't care. And frankly, it makes me sick, the thought that there are British Jews who feel unsafe and who feel that if this man becomes Prime Minister, that their country is not welcoming to them. And that is disgusting.
I think you're right. I think the chief rabbi speaking out was unprecedented. I think the letter itself was extraordinary. He didn't just talk about the claims against the party. He spoke specifically about the Jewish MPs that have been harassed and pushed out. he spoke about the Labour Party fighting against the global definition of anti-Semitism. And he spoke about the formal investigation by the Equality and Human Rights Commission into the Labour Party for racism, which again is unprecedented. I don't think that's happened since the BNP. So all of these, every single part of this is outstanding and extraordinary. And I don't think Jeremy Corbyn showed any empathy, any sympathy or compassion or any human emotion when asked these really serious questions. He seemed irritated by them and annoyed by them. That's what got to me.
Yeah, but I mean, we know this. He's been the same way for when he became party leader. 2017, everyone knew this, and this is nothing new. He's not tried to hide any of this. This is in plain sight. I mean, look, there's other issues as well. I mean, you've seen how the Hindu community have now jumped on board to support the Jewish community. Yeah. I understand that. I also understand that others have questions to ask about, the conservatives and Islam. I do understand that, but these are slightly different because we've never had a leader like this who, personally, seems to have had a 40-year dislike of one particular community, and that's the way it comes across. Boris may have said some silly things and debatable things, but we've never had this 40-year obsession with particularly disliking a particular section of the population, and that's very, very worrying.
And speaking of not showing remorse, obviously Boris Johnson has come out today. It's not it's a related issue, but it's not the same. But Boris Johnson has come out today and said he apologises, which is not that difficult to do.
Yeah.
I know Amir's got some thoughts on that, so I'll let you take the lead there.
I mean, I'm trying to understand. Let's just stick on the topic of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. I'm trying to understand what game he's playing at, what Jeremy Corbyn is actually doing. Is he out of touch? I kind of feel like he's really out of touch and lost the ball. And I don't know why people don't see this. In the interview, he refused to apologise. It's almost like he didn't believe that there was a problem, or he didn't believe that he was being racist. He refused to apologise, 4 times? He didn't express any kind of empathy. He wasn't passionate about the topic. He wasn't passionate about the country. He wasn't passionate about people's feelings and the racism that they had experienced, and about their unwilling desire to get justice. So I'm just trying to figure out, what is he playing at? What is he after?
Well, you know what I think it is, Amir, and I have to say I give a lot of credit to Andrew Neil, not only for leading with that question, and to be fair, Newsnight also had a long piece on it, but Andrew Neil persisted on that. It was about 10 minutes for half an hour interview. And you know what I think the problem is I think that, frankly, there are a lot of people, and not exclusively on the far left, but predominantly on the far left, that just don't care, that they think that Jews are part of a...
They're not quite comfortable. There's
there's an otherness, and there's part of a sort of conspiracy that's tied up with the Israel thing, and
a little bit too successful in business, a little bit, all of that.
A little bit too British. I mean, look at Maureen Lipman, right? I love Maureen Lipman because she's a good Yorkshire lass, and she's everyone's grandmother, right? And she's hilarious, and she's proudly British, proudly Jewish, like so many British Jews. And when she's coming out and saying these things, people need to stop and listen. And one of the reasons that this interview is, I think, a game changer, is my moment, is because I hope, if 3 million people watched it last night, when it went out, I hope that actually this is getting a broader look. It's not just going to be on the front page of the Jewish Chronicle and other Jewish community newspapers, but actually it was on the front page of every paper. And actually someone from the board of deputies said a quotation which I think is really important to us and really sums up the whole issue for me, and it's frankly, I think the final word on it is, what starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews.
Absolutely. And without just sitting here reading out quotes, I would like to read the ending of the Chief Rabbi's letter, because it really just honestly stood out to me. He said, "It's not my place to tell any person how they should vote. I regret being in this situation at all. I simply pose the following question. What will the result of this election say about the moral compass of our country? When December the 12th arrives, I ask every person to vote with their conscience. Be in no doubt the very soul of our nation is at stake." Poignant, right?
I mean, I think that's very poignant, but I also question. I mean, you said that Boris Johnson has come out and apologised. Well, he hasn't personally apologised for his own remarks. He's apologised for the Conservative Party and the Islamophobia that's been experienced by members of the former Conservatives or former Conservatives, and he's also suggested that there will be an independent review. But I mean, even Boris Johnson's on shaky ground when it comes to inflaming people and inflaming racism in this country. I think the most important thing for our leader, for the future Prime Minister, is to bring the country together and to unite this country. And when this country is united, it's going to be extreme. If Boris Johnson truly wants Brexit to succeed, he has to unite this country. And coming out with "let's get Brexit done," that's going to unite this country, isn't enough, because you have anti-Semitism, you have Islamophobia, you have other forms of racism and discrimination that people all across the country experience. We have to address these issues. We can't allow racism to be tolerated. This is unacceptable. And I think Boris has a moral obligation as the Prime Minister of this country to take this bull by the horns and bring it and tame it and bring it to bear, and to really wrestle with this issue and to solve it.
And I was really pleased that there was a candidate, I think in Scotland, maybe Glasgow, that was a Conservative candidate that was suspended today because of remarks that she had made. And I think you're right. I think we hear a lot about zero tolerance, and the Conservatives love to talk about how they have a zero tolerance approach to bullying and abuse and these things. And, well, frankly, it's not true. It needs work. Our whole politics, as you say, Amir, needs work in this respect. And I hope that Rabbi Mervis has his intervention actually brings light to that. And I was pleased to see the Archbishop of Canterbury, who's not a man I agree with on many things, and other faith leaders actually coming out and showing a bit of support. I'm not one for this sort of wishy-washy guitar interfaith kumbaya stuff, but actually there is some force when you see the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Hindu Council and others stand up with the Chief Rabbi. So hopefully the message will get out there and something will change.
So, of course, the day after this big interview hit, Labour held a press conference with some big news of their own, apparently new news, which is some documents that were leaked back in October about US-UK trade deals. And the NHS is mentioned in them, but these trade deals are not all about the NHS. And Labour are obviously spinning this lie again that the Tories want to sell the NHS. Even though it's been debunked by Boris, it's been debunked by Trump. No one in their right mind believes that anyone's trying to sell the public institution that is so beloved by everybody, even though the Tories have been running it for 44 years of the 70 years that it's been running, and they've had plenty of opportunity to sell it if they wanted to. That is the line that the Labour Party is taking right now. So where do we stand on this?
I mean, my sister is a doctor. My brother-in-law is a hospital intensive care unit consultant, and they're both angry because we're leaving the EU, and I think they've told me that they're going to vote Liberal Democrat, and the Conservatives, despite what you said, that they've been managing the NHS for over 40 years of the 70-year history, they haven't done a good job because doctors, nurses are angry, they're frustrated. Accident emergency waiting times are at the record high. So what's going wrong? What's happening? Why have the Conservative Party failed with the NHS? So you can argue that the Conservatives are protecting the NHS, they defend the NHS, they love the NHS, but so why are the people in the NHS angry at the Conservatives? How can you bring these 2 points together?
Yeah, it is. It's very strange. I mean, I do think that I would a note of caution on what Calvin said. I would say that portraying American predatory companies on attacking the NHS is quite a powerful thing for the British psyche, I would say. Quite popular. It would be very popular. I myself, there's something instinctive. It really annoys me when Americans hear, slag off the NHS or anything like that. I think, yes, it might be a bit rickety, potentially very inefficient, but it's a lot better and a lot more humane than the very backward system in the US where people are just discarded on the street. So you do have to consider that. So I think, linking this to the fears about a US trade deal is actually quite powerful. And even myself, as a soft lever, took a lot of flack from the two extremists here, the two ERG guys.
The two only
I voiced a lot
proper
of concerns
levers.
with Amir actually before he went to Remain. I genuinely don't think we would do well out of a US trade deal, and certainly don't trust Donald Trump on that. So I think, and then that's me, coming from the right, and I think, and the more everyone else, or from the centre right, as you would say, CR, and I'm sure the centre left or something, but yeah, so I do think that's quite a powerful thing, and we'll see how it plays out. But I would think linking this, American companies don't have a good reputation here. American business and their relationships and their tendency to put British interests first, I think is very debatable indeed, very disputable, and I don't think there's much a chance that would be seen favourably by the public here.
But Joel, it might be powerful, but is it not disingenuous?
No, because I think I struggle to see how US corporations would give us a good deal that helped us, benefited us in more than it benefited them.
But the Conservative manifesto has proposed 50,000 new nurses. Is that correct or not? And it's been shown that it's not actually going to be 50,000 new nurses. It's going to be 30,000 new nurses. Now, I've been looking over Twitter. I've been looking at Conservative candidates all across the country, retweeting this sum of 50,000 more nurses, and I'm just trying to figure out to myself: are these people? Do they know that this isn't the correct figure? Are they just repeating, or they're parroting what CCHQ is saying from the top? Why isn't the Conservative Party correcting this figure? I mean, 30,000 more nurses.
Again, can we get a CCHQ fact check, please?
Yeah, I mean,
it does seem like a stretch.
Why exaggerate and say 50,000 new nurses, and then on the back of that, leaving the EU is going to cause problems for the recruitment of nurses? How soon will it be before new nurses will be able to process their immigration application forms from other countries? I mean, this is going to be a lengthy process. Are we going to be able to recruit all these new nurses in the next year? Is that feasible by the end of 2020?
It's not in the next year.
I have to say, Amir, I think you're as good as bringing everything back to our membership of the European Union as the Prime Minister is. But you're right. And I got a lot of flack, by the way, for agreeing with you too much last time. But I'm going to agree with you.
You're turning proper liberal these days.
on this, that it's a disingenuous figure. And you may say that actually, well, this is part of the strategy. You use a figure, 50,000, and people talk about it because it's disputed. But all anyone's hearing is that the Conservatives will bring thousands of more nurses. And of course, that was the whole £350 million on the bus figure. So it may be good politics, although interestingly, I think it's very much runs contrary to the Linton Crosby view, which is the Conservatives can't win on the NHS, so they shouldn't talk about it. But both of those positions, whether are fundamentally political. And what annoys me about the Conservatives doing this and the Labour Party with their sort of nonsense tinfoil hat radio tuner sort of conspiracy theorists with the selling the NHS is that we're just not being honest about the NHS here. It's really important healthcare, really important issue. People really care about it, and it's a political football. Now, I'm not the first person to say that, but it's depressing because it speaks to the quality of debate in our country and during our elections. But the central problem is that the reason we have such a poor quality debate about the NHS is because of us, because of the people, because of the electorate. There is fundamentally a tension in this country. People do not want to pay the money, the taxes, to fund the NHS that they demand. It's an unsustainable system. We either have to change the model of the NHS because it is just not going to continue to work, or we have to get used to paying a lot more in taxation. And nobody's having that honest conversation. And frankly, we're all doing a disservice to the people who use the NHS, the people who work in the NHS, by using it to score political points.
Yeah. And you're not allowed to talk about how it could be improved, because if you mention that the NHS is inefficient or isn't as efficient as it could be, you're going against the cult of our NHS, and you're perceived as against the NHS, which it shouldn't be that black and white. It's ridiculous.
I know, absolutely. I agree with that. And the minute you say, "Oh well, it may be that we could get a private company to do hospital food," people start shrieking that you're selling the NHS, when actually there's no good reason why the NHS should itself hire chefs and people to do.
Yeah, but that's about the executives in the NHS and the way that they're positioned. I mean, I think obviously the Labour Party treat it as if they own it, but I think if in the long term, I don't think the current chief executive of the NHS is that bad. He's not as anti-Tory as most. So I think, trying to work with some of these leading figures and making them realise that, as Calvin said, of course, the NHS has been run by Conservatives for much longer than Labour. Is the way to do it, really.
I mean, I've got quite a unique experience with the NHS because, my late father was seriously ill for many, many years, and I went with him to the hospital many, many times for different reasons. And I remember very clearly about probably 5 years ago, he was having some chest pains, and I took him down to A&E in Charing Cross Hospital, and we were there for 10 hours, and he wasn't seen by a doctor for 10 hours, and we just left because he was old. He was old, he was ill, he couldn't be sitting on a bench waiting for someone to see him for that period of time. He was still getting chest pains. After about 2 weeks, I took him back to the hospital. We were there for about 12 hours the second time, and he wasn't seen. He wasn't seen by a doctor. He was seen by nurses, and they were just up to their ears in work, up to their heads in work. And guess what? A month later, he had a heart attack. And the NHS is really, like Hamish said, the way it's being managed right now is unsustainable. It's just ridiculous. Throwing money at the NHS isn't going to solve the NHS. It isn't going to fix the NHS. It isn't just about fixing the NHS now. We have to look at long-term solutions, and part of that is going to be about preventative health. We have to be looking at different ways of solving the health crisis in the UK. And I have my ideas, and different people have different ideas, but obviously, like you said, Joel, America's interest is America first. I mean, if they're going to come and do a trade deal with us in the UK, they're going to be doing a trade deal to benefit America. They're not going to be doing a trade deal to benefit the UK. Now, the UK might get some kind of crumbs, but the reality is that they're going to want to in some way.
And this myth, where do people think that this cheaper meat or this cheaper anything else would come from? It comes from lowering costs or lowering standards. I mean, you can't just magically produce things for cheaper.
Look, of course.
Without taking it back to trade deals, because obviously a trade deal it's not all about what one side can get. It's a compromise. That's how negotiations work. We all know that. But I think Amir actually really hit the nail on the head when he said he's had a unique experience in the NHS. And I think that is the core thing here, that so many of us have all had unique experiences with the NHS. It's an emotive topic, and that's why it's such a difficult problem to address. And that's why I think we struggle, both parties, both sides of the political spectrum struggle to address it publicly. And I think we've had quite a somber, very serious midweek conversation here on the Political Dregs podcast. But thank you very much for watching. Please hit like, please comment, please subscribe, and tell us what you'd like to hear us talk about in the next one. I've been Calvin. Thank you, Joel, Amir, and Hamish.
Are we on to Friends of the Show? Our Friends of the Show is on the week.
Yes, please do.
You want to say hello to some friends of the show?
Do it.
We're always keen to get fan feedback, and we're here for the fans. We're here to entertain and inform.
Yes, but not educate. Well, no, I mean, some of Amir's Lib Dem friends have apparently been watching and think that the three gobby Tories are interrupting him too much. I have to say I was very upset by that, because I got a lot of grief from these guys for agreeing with him for the whole podcast last time. But I'm not sure that's very good.
You agreed twice.
That can all change in the next couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's good. Very diplomatic.
Excellent.
Great to have our local and not so local fans. So yeah, it's good stuff, and we'll be back soon.
I need to top up my wine for the sake of continuity.
Let's do NHS for now. I'm going to go full gun on Hong Kong.
Okay.
I better do my research. Was it 17,000?
We need to.
But yeah.
Do not use that in the bloopers.